The siege of Medina was over. The Quraysh had withdrawn, their grand alliance shattered by the trench, by deception, and by the forces of nature itself. The Muslims had endured weeks of uncertainty, hunger, and fear, but now they stood victorious. Yet one matter remained unresolved: the betrayal of Banu Qurayza. During the siege, they had secretly negotiated with the Quraysh, violating their pact with the Muslims and leaving Medina vulnerable to attack from within. Now, their fate had to be decided. The Banu Qurayza were one of the three major Jewish tribes in Medina. Unlike the other Jewish tribes who had previously been expelled for their hostilities, the Banu Qurayza had remained neutral in past conflicts. But during the Battle of the Trench, they had taken a different course. Tempted by the prospect of an easy victory, they engaged in secret negotiations with the Quraysh, discussing the possibility of opening the city's defenses to the invaders. If their plan had succeeded, Medina would have fallen, and Muhammad's followers would have been wiped out. Spies uncovered their treachery, and though they never formally launched an attack on the Muslims, their mere willingness to collaborate with the Quraysh was enough to brand them as traitors. With the siege now lifted, the question remained: what punishment was just for those who had put the entire community in mortal danger? Muhammad did not act impulsively. He first gathered his forces and surrounded the fortress of Banu Qurayza. For 25 days, the Muslims laid siege to the stronghold. Unlike the Quraysh, who had an open escape route when they retreated, the Banu Qurayza were trapped. With no allies coming to their aid, they were left to their fate. As the days passed, their food and water supplies ran low. Desperation grew among their ranks. The Muslims continued to blockade the fortress, ensuring no one could escape. Inside, panic began to spread among the Banu Qurayza. Some attempted negotiations, sending envoys to plead for mercy, but Muhammad's position was clear: there would be no return to the old ways. The betrayal had been too great. Finally, Banu Qurayza surrendered, knowing they had no options left. Once in custody, Muhammad appointed Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, the chief of the Aus tribe, to pass judgment on the fate of Banu Qurayza. Sa'd was a respected leader, once an ally of the Jewish tribes, but he had seen firsthand the danger their betrayal had posed. His decision was swift. The men of Banu Qurayza, those who had participated in the betrayal, would be executed. The women and children would be spared but taken captive. It was a harsh judgment, but one that was in line with the wartime practices of the time. For the Muslims, it was necessary to ensure that no future internal betrayals could threaten their existence. The executions were carried out in batches over several days. Reports state that trenches were dug in the market of Medina, where the men of Banu Qurayza were brought forward and executed. The number of the slain is debated, but historical sources estimate between 600 and 900 men were put to death. It was the largest mass execution in Muhammad's time. Their former allies among the Muslims watched with grim resolve, understanding that their own survival had depended on eliminating the threat from within. The women and children were taken as captives and distributed among the Muslims, some later ransomed or freed. Some women, particularly those of noble status, were sent to distant regions, where they would live out their days away from Medina. The execution of Banu Qurayza sent a clear message: treachery would not be tolerated. For years, Medina had been threatened by divisions from within, with rival factions constantly shifting allegiances. But now, for the first time, Medina was truly unified. There were no more Jewish tribes that could serve as potential allies to the Quraysh, and the Muslim community stood stronger than ever. Muhammad's leadership had been tested, and he had made a decisive statement. Loyalty was paramount, and betrayal meant death. The Muslims no longer had to fear conspiracies from within, allowing them to focus their efforts on the Quraysh, who remained their greatest external enemy. With the internal threat eliminated, Muhammad turned his attention back to the Quraysh. The war between Mecca and Medina was not yet over. The Quraysh had been defeated, but they would not forget their humiliation. A final reckoning was coming. Even centuries later, the judgment against Banu Qurayza remains one of the most debated events in Muhammad's military campaigns. Supporters argue that the punishment was justified by the laws of tribal warfare in Arabia at the time. In those days, betrayal of an alliance was considered one of the gravest offenses, and the punishment of execution was not unusual. Had Banu Qurayza succeeded in their treachery, the Muslims would have been slaughtered without mercy. Critics, however, view the event as an extreme response, questioning whether all the men of Banu Qurayza were equally guilty or if some were merely caught in the political crossfire. Some historians speculate that alternative punishments, such as exile or imprisonment, could have been considered, though in the brutal realities of 7th century Arabia, mercy was rarely shown to those seen as traitors. Regardless of perspective, the elimination of Banu Qurayza reshaped the balance of power in Medina. Their removal ended any internal threats, ensuring that no faction within the city could undermine Muhammad's authority. For the first time, Medina was fully unified under his leadership, free from the instability of shifting allegiances. This newfound security allowed the Muslims to focus on external challenges, strengthening their position against the Quraysh. It also sent a clear message to surrounding tribes: betrayal would not be tolerated, and loyalty to the Muslim leadership was now an undeniable reality. The fate of Banu Qurayza marked a turning point in the consolidation of Muhammad's rule. With Medina firmly under his control, internal threats had been neutralized, allowing him to shift his focus outward. The Quraysh, once seen as an unstoppable force, had suffered a major setback, their failed siege exposing their vulnerabilities. Their dominance was no longer absolute, and the balance of power in Arabia was beginning to shift. The Muslims had endured their greatest trial, yet and emerged stronger. For the first time, Muhammad was not merely fighting for survival. He could now strategize for the future, laying the groundwork for the next phase of his mission. In the next episode, we move toward a pivotal moment in Islamic history, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, a diplomatic agreement that would change the course of the war and bring Muhammad closer to Mecca than ever before. This would be a turning point in his military and political strategy, paving the way for the eventual conquest of Mecca.